What's up, everybody? CHM Carnivorous here. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you had a wonderful holiday season. We are back with another video, and today we're going to talk all about the seedlings that I've been growing. I'm going to show you an update on them, explain what new and exciting things that are happening currently with them, and then what are the next steps now that I've been growing them under tray for probably 2-3 months now. So all that and more coming up, but before I do, if you don't mind, please like and subscribe and share in this content so we can continue to get the word out to as many people as possible about these amazing plants. If you are currently a subscriber, thank you so much for your ongoing support. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into the video about the seedlings. See you in a minute. So we've reached a pivotal moment in the life cycle of these seedlings. Now, if you'll remember, probably about 3 months ago, I'm just guessing, I bought a bunch of seeds from Carnivorous. Some of those seeds had been around for 6 months, some 2 months, and so I'm going to talk about that and what they look like. But what I specifically want to show today is the hardening off process. Now, this is pivotal when you're growing your seedlings to sort of acclimate them to the environment that they're going to be in long term. So when they start off as seedlings, you want to give them extremely high humidity, almost 100%, and just a little bit of airflow. And as they grow, you want to continue to give them a little bit more airflow and slowly start to acclimate them. They've reached a point in their maturity where I feel that they can withstand the hardening off process. The hardening off process is critical to their long-term success rate. And so without further ado, let's turn the camera around. I'm going to show you a couple things here. First, I'm going to show you what the hardening off process looks like. I'm going to show you some of the pitfalls you need to look for. I'm going to also show you some of the health of the seeds and show you what you can expect from seeds that might be 6 months old compared to 2 months old, and then also what to look for if your seedlings need a little bit more help as far as nutrients. So let's turn the camera around. So there is a lot to unpack here on this video, but let's go ahead and talk first thing about what your seedlings will look like if they need more fertilizer. Now, we will get, and I will show these off in a minute, but you see how bright green these seedlings are? They are doing very well and are very healthy. Now, if you look over here at these, I'm getting tangled up in my other Nepenthes. See how, oh, if I can get the camera focused, see how yellow and pale those are? That is a good indicator that these will require some fertilization. Now, you have to be very, very careful when fertilizing any Nepenthes, but specifically little babies like this. So you want to get some maxi and heavily dilute it just to give them a little bit of a start, and I'm talking very, very little. When they start turning pale like that is a good indicator. Now, normally when they're this small, they will feed off of larvae, things like that. They just happen to be in the soil naturally, but that's not always going to be even, and so it's important that you subsidize that with feeding. Now, the other thing I want to show you, if I can get it to focus, it's so impossibly small. See how that leaf has got the blacking on the end? That is because it was not ready for the hardening off process. Doesn't mean this seedling's going to die. It just means that it was a little bit shocked by the hardening off process. But let me go ahead and bring over some of the larger ones that I have and talk about them, and then we'll go from there into some of the pitfalls and what to look for when you're starting this process. So this is by far the healthiest tray that I have, and they are growing very nicely in this tray. As you can see here, this one is doing very well. Now, again, remember, this has been about 3 months, so they take a long time to grow. So you have to have patience when growing these Nepenthes seedlings. By all accounts, this one is doing just perfect. The plants are well fed, as you can see. They are developing quite nice. Now, a lot of the questions I get is, when can you start to separate? My personal opinion is I like to wait until they get a little bit bigger than this, or I say I would like to, this is my first attempt. I'm going to wait until they get a little bit bigger than this, just because their roots are going to be incredibly fine right now. Theoretically, you probably could separate them at this point, especially this one in the middle, and it would do just fine. However, what's the rush? They've got all this room right here to spread their feet, and so I'm going to go ahead and just let them continue to grow and be happy. I've seen growers wait until they get to the point. See, I'm going to pan over here. Hopefully I don't make everybody sick. I've seen growers wait till they get to this size before they start separating them. So it's entirely up to you how you want to do that. I don't see any risk to these plants at all by keeping them in this environment until they get significantly larger than this. Now, if this tray was completely full, that might change my story a little bit, because they will tend to get start to strangle themselves. But in this case, they have plenty of room to move, and they will be just fine. Now, these were some of the 2-month germinated seedlings. The ICPS website says anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months is what's good for you. Let me show you the difference between these and some plants that were about 6 months for the germination period. So what you see here is the 6 month, and these are actually the best ones out of the 6 months. So now keep in mind, not all plants are created equal, and depending on what the hybrid is or the species is, it's going to take significantly longer for them to grow. So it's not necessarily a fair measurement to measure one against the other without knowing that context. But I will tell you, all of my seedlings that were sitting around for 6 months before they were germinated are not doing nearly as well as the 2-month one. These are still doing okay. They're going to need a lot longer to grow, and technically I probably could have waited to harden these off, but I wanted to do it all at once. And so what do I mean by hardening off? So if I pull back and I'll show you these plants, prior to about a few days ago, these trays had covers on them that have little ventilation holes on them. And so what I would do is when they first put them down to start germinating, I had that ventilation closed. So it was 100% humidity. And over a period of a couple weeks, I started opening those vents more and more. It's important to remember that while they're seeds, they don't necessarily require the kind of airflow they need as adults, but they still need some because you don't want mold to set in or detritus. And so what I've done now that it's been about 2 months is I've completely removed the tops, and this can be kind of scary, right? So these things are very, very, very small and will dry out very quickly. So some of the things that I do to help prevent that is I use a humidifier that basically I have the fan facing so that the humidity blows right over the top of these plants, and then I don't have any of my fans blowing directly on them. And so that has done very well for them. So far I've had a looks like 100% success rate. I do expect that I'll probably lose a couple, but 100% success rate on that. Now the other thing to note is my grow tent, it sits at about 75-80% humidity, so I do have that going for me as well. So if you're growing these in the home or somewhere you don't have as much humidity, you might want to wait a little longer before hardening off until they're a little bit larger, somewhat like that tray there in the back there. Those would be fine. But some of these ones right here that are smaller, you might want to give them a little bit more time. Now, I mentioned that I do have a humidifier going over the top of them. Let's talk about some of the pitfalls with that, and also talk about one of the things to look out for when you're growing seedlings and you're hardening off plants. What we have here is an unhealthy environment for seedlings. Now, the interesting thing is all of these pots have remained at the same level, and all of them have had the same conditions the entire time. None of them have been closer to a humidity source than the other. The crazy thing to talk about, and I've talked about this in other videos, is this was all quote unquote dead sphagnum moss that I bought at the store, and now all of these trays are full of live sphagnum moss. So keep that in mind when you are growing these. Now, the reason why this is unhealthy is, I'll show you. I've showed this in other videos, but I will show you this. Look at all that water coming out of there. Now, the interesting thing to note is I have not filled these trays with any water whatsoever. I do spray occasionally, but it has been a long time since I've done this. Now, the other thing that's interesting to note is I'll have to do this probably once or twice a week, and this tray will be full of water. As you can see right here, I don't know if I can get close enough. See that gelatinous looking stuff? That is mold, slime mold that's growing, and that will kill your plants very quickly, and that comes from it being too wet of an environment. One thing to note about sphagnum moss, especially when it's alive, it's an expert at sponging up the humidity in the atmosphere. So that is something you got to watch very carefully. I don't know why some pots are sponging up more than others, but it just is a thing that's happening, and it is a very important thing to look out for. Now, the seedlings don't seem to mind too much. I'm going to keep an eye on them, of course, because it can have long-term very poor and deadly effects on them. So I'm going to continue to watch out for that, but it's something to note when you're growing these plants, especially from seedlings, using these trays. One thing you can do is I could drill holes in the bottom of it. I don't really want to do that because I don't want to overreact to it too much and then dry it out. I feel when they're this small there's a greater risk to them drying out than there is to them getting overwatered. I will continue to keep an eye on it. The other thing that you need to watch out for is if the moss starts to take over. Now, if you use live sphagnum moss, that's something you have to look out for right out of the gate. This is, as you guys know, has been part of this journey. This is the first time that I've ever used or grown seeds from Nepenthes. I had no idea that dead sphagnum moss would come to life like this, and so that's something else to note. If you want to grow sphagnum moss, it looks like you can do it from dead sphagnum moss. I know that's been a topic of contention for a long time. This is proof right here that it will do just that in spades. All right, well, let's move on to the next topic. So in regards to lighting, I use the same light. So I keep them in the same grow tent and use the same light since they were germinating little seedlings as I would as adults. Nepenthes do require a pretty good amount of light in order to germinate and produce seeds. They don't require any sort of cold stratification or anything of that nature, but I wanted to provide them the same light so when they are hardening off, they're only having to deal with the drop in humidity and not the overexposure to light. When they're young like this, their leaves are incredibly fragile. So if you give them too much light, they will burn very quickly. And so I felt like that would be a good game plan, and it seems to have worked very nicely. And so when you're picking your light source, make sure to try to give them as much of what they will have as adults as possible. Somebody who grows these things for a living, seedlings from a living, might have a better take on that, and I welcome the comments and any sort of further direction you can give. The other thing to note, and I'm going to switch gears here, the other thing to note is make sure that when you're putting your seedlings down, that you are pressing them down. So here's a great example of that. This tray has not done well. This was one of the 6-month one, and we've got a couple growing in here, right? But if you look at this one in particular, it's barely in the soil surface, and that has it has hindered its ability to grow. I'm going to try to push it down ever so carefully, but when I was putting these seeds down, I did not do my due diligence 100% of the time and push those down. And so you want to make sure that you are pushing those down and then also spraying them down. And the reason for that is you don't expose those roots. So the reason why this one's not doing so hot could be a number of things, but one hunch that I have is that it has had exposure to those roots, which means those roots are drying out and they don't have as much humidity around the plant. So something to take note. The next thing I want to talk about is I get a lot of things of when can we start to feed these Nepenthes sort of that fertilizer or insects or something like that. When they're this small, they will still continue to get food from fungus gnat larvae, anything like that. When they start to get about this size, you could potentially start to give them very tiny pieces of insect. I would not do any sort of granular fertilizer like an Osmocote yet at that size, but they could probably take that. This size, you definitely want to leave them alone and let nature run its course. There's really no hurry, right? These things have had millions of years to get this figured out, and they will get it figured out. And I promise you, if you look closely, you will see little gnats running around in your sphagnum moss. No matter how hard you have tried to keep them from being in here, they will just find a way. But yeah, that's another question I get is when can you start feeding them? I'm going to let them continue to do their thing and just get it figured out. I will, like I said, potentially provide some very diluted fertilizer to them right there, just to try to get that coloration back, because that one looks like it'll do very well if I give it to them. Any smaller than that, I would be a little bit nervous. Now, if you are going to provide fertilizer to it, make sure you do your research, make sure you provide caution, use caution as most importantly, but then try your best, and this is going to be difficult, but try your best not to get it on the moss itself, because you will create a breeding ground for mold, and that will compete with your Nepenthes and will not surely, but has a good likelihood of killing them. So look out for that. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. If you're new to growing Nepenthes from seeds like I am, start small, start cheap. Right now, Carnivorous actually has a huge sale going on. And some of I think their truncata seedlings are as low as like $8 or $9, maybe 15, but not much higher than that. I think it was wide peristome by truncata C or something like that. So awesome deal, right? You do want to check the dates on the seeds. If it's a good reputable site, it will have when the seeds were harvested, and so that will let you know Now, I will say that I sort of threw caution to the wind, and I got some that were 2 months old to 6 months old, and I have noticed a difference. At first, I really didn't. Some of them took longer to germinate than others, but I have definitely seen a lower strike rate with the ones that were older, which is understandable. If you have seeds right away that you can put into the soil, you will get a much higher strike rate than you will on the seeds that have been around for a while. But I do highly recommend that anybody give this a try, right? If you can get it cheap, you can. It's a lot of fun to experience. It's good to see them grow, and it teaches you a lot about Nepenthes and how they react through the entirety of their life cycle. I've learned so much by watching these little ones grow. So right now, I know Carnivorous is having a really good sale on their seedlings, and keep an eye out for those things. Keep an eye out for sales. Now, the good news is the older the seeds get, they will go lower in price. So if it's something that you're just wanting to try, give your hand at, you could potentially benefit from that. I've shown you that 6 months, while has a lower strike rate, are still successful. So if you can get it cheap and give it a shot, why not? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions that I did not cover about the seedlings, please hit me up in the comments. You can also reach out to me on Instagram. I'm always willing to help with anything that I can. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you had a wonderful holiday, a wonderful Christmas, and as always, I hope you have a great day and a great week. Talk to you soon.